Hey now, this hangout is live and on the air. Welcome to OmniBros Live on a Monday night. This is OmniDog talking to you, and tonight we have some special guests. First, we have my co-host from Comics Guide 101, Luis.
Hello.
Luis, how's it going?
Good. It's a pretty good day. It's a pretty good day. Trying to make the best out of today.
That is all we can ask for.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's all we usually get.
Sure.
And we have from the fabulous anthology comic Puerto Rico Strong, we have Neil and Marco.
Hey.
Hi, everyone.
And Neil is without a picture, but we'll still be able to talk to him, which turned out to be better than having his picture and not being able to talk to him. Nothing against what he looks like, but this was the choice we were given. Better than having his picture and not being able to talk. Nothing against what he looks like. But who's echoing? Better than having his picture.
Marco, I think you need to mute the YouTube like that.
But if you guys have YouTube, you need to mute your YouTube.
I don't have mine open right now.
Marco, do you have YouTube open?
Yeah, I muted it.
Okay.
There we go. Okay.
There we go. Okay, so we've got. This is actually going smoothly for an OmniBros show, if you believe it. Luis, in order to present this show, we need a sponsor, and who is our fine sponsor?
That would be, ladies and gentlemen, Instock Trades. Instock Trades, where you can get up to 50% off your hardcovers, trade paperbacks, absolute editions, all that good stuff on release week. And on top of that, they also have loyalty discounts. Just brag, tell them how do their books come packaged. What do I tell them?
You always say, safely cradled like a newborn baby.
You damn Skippy. Instock Trades, ladies and gentlemen, take the Instock Trades challenge. Go check them out. Do not miss an opportunity, and don't ever settle for anything less than perfectly arrived books.
Well said. I'm not a very good host because I don't have a physical copy of Puerto Rico Strong, so I can't look up your full name. So Marco, what's your full name?
Marco Lopez.
And you are creator and editor for Puerto Rico Strong, and Neil, you're also creator and editor at Puerto Rico Strong, correct?
Yes, I am.
Let's start off by you guys telling us which stories in the anthology you wrote.
I did Myth and Monsters, which was written with Derek, who was one of the other editors, and it was illustrated by Jamie Jones and lettered by DC Hopkins.
And then,
Neil, how about you? Yeah.
I did Hope, which has art by Ramon Sierra Santiago. Really just fun, opportunity here with this story, and honestly, all of it, it's great.
And we're going to have Gabe join us soon. He's the one you've been talking to. He's a fellow OmniBro, and there may be other creators from Puerto Rico Strong jumping in. But why don't one of you tell us exactly how this book came to be and why it came to be and how it came. First of all, I don't want to speak for Luis, but I know he feels the same way. When I say these stories and the art, the stories are really strong. Speaking of Puerto Rico Strong, these are all really well-written, powerful stories. And I think this book needs to be something that everybody reads because, of course, being the typical cloistered white Anglo-Saxon Protestant that I am, I had no idea about the rich history of Puerto Rico. And this book is not only fun and informative, but it's history in kind of a fun, interesting way. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how the book actually came to be?
So last year, before the last hurricane, when I was sitting there watching the news of the second hurricane that was going to be coming in, and what was basically going to happen. And I like to call myself a hurricane survivor because I've been through many. I actually lived in Miami when we had Hurricane Andrew.
Oh, wow.
So I know what it's like to go through a powerful hurricane that literally just messes up your whole life, and everything around you. So thinking of that and remembering about Love Is Love, and I'm sure there was others before Love Is Love, but just thinking about that, I thought, you know what? Maybe since comics is one of the few things I know how to actually do good in life, I thought, maybe I could do something with that to try to help Puerto Rico. So I immediately hit up Derek and I said, hey, what do you think about doing an anthology, charity anthology to help Puerto Rico? And Derek was like, yes, let's do it. So I was like, all right, cool. I want to go hit up Desiree. Then I hit her up and she was like, yes. Then Derek was like, want to bring in Neil? And I was like, yes. And then after that, it was just very much okay, so there's the four of us, we'll be the editors. And then I was like, okay, so let me start reaching out to talent. So I started reaching out to talent. And then in chat, I was like, maybe we should bring it to Lionforge because I did some work for them and Desiree works for them. So I brought it up to Carl, who's one of the co-founders of Lionforge, and he liked the idea. And I know Desiree, I believe they had a meeting where Desiree pushed for it. And literally like 2, maybe 3 days later after talking to him, he emailed me back and he was like, we're in. And then after that, it was literally off to the races of contacting talent. I mean, letterers, pencilers, colorists. But before we did that, Desiree came up with this paragraph that basically encapsulated what the book would be about. And then we also wrote a list of topics to cover. And you didn't have to, if you're coming on board the book, pick any topic. But we, said, hey, these are what we'd like to cover. But if you choose to do something else, we're cool with that, as long as it fits with the overall, what we're trying to do here in this. And then I think it was Derek who came up with the title Puerto Rico Strong. And then after that, it was just the craziest 5 to 6 months.
It was a whirlwind.
Yeah. From contacting talent to actually starting work on the book, like the actual work, I believe, started end of November, December, and the book came out March 14th of this year. So
wow,
that's fast. That is really fast.
We had to have scripts in by the end of November.
Man,
it was one of those, before the book went to the printer, it was one of those situations when we were done, I was like, I don't think I ever want to do one of these ever again.
It was definitely a mad dash to the finish line.
There's looking at the finished product, this looks like something that was years in the making because everything's really quite polished and well done. I mean, you can't tell that you guys, that you had your hair on fire, so to speak. It really looks like, besides a labor of love, there's no sign of it being a hurried up project.
Yeah, everyone.
Oh, sorry, Marco, go.
No, I was gonna say everyone went above and beyond. Like literally, I'm sure besides us, there was a lot of sleepless nights for everyone else involved.
I mean, we even had someone who contributed who was actually like in Puerto Rico, who, and Marco, correct me if I'm wrong here, but was working pretty much by candlelight with no power.
Yeah, there was one creator who contributed that way. We actually have 1, 2, 3, I think it's 5 creators in the book are living in Puerto Rico, if I'm not mistaken. One of them did a pinup, and I think the other ones worked on stories. And yeah, I do remember the one and she literally told us in an email when I had to do, you got to do the emails where you're like, hey, where you're at. And she was like, apologizing and being like, oh, the power's coming and going. So sometimes it's like by candlelight. And I'm like, you don't have to apologize to me. I mean, the fact that you still want to finish this with the craziness that's going on there, that says a lot of good about you. So no need to apologize.
And,
I mean, for those of you guys that don't know, I mean, for those that are out there, a usual turnaround rate for a book like this with so many creators, so many writers, so many different artists sharing so many different stories, it's like Jess said, this would usually take like a year to get all this stuff together, and you guys just banged it out really quick, which just makes it even more impressive at the quality of work that is in this book.
Yeah, it's usually you want to give yourself, I think it's like, what is it, like, Neil, like 6 months before a book is released of like marketing time. And then before that, at least 6 months to a year of work time. So, you know, all in all, it's like 12 to 18 months, you know? So for something like this to have gone from idea to finish project in 5 to 6 months is it's insanity, literally.
Yeah, I think it's like a very nice testament to the book, and really kind of, like Jess, you were saying, that labor of love, and how everyone just really came together because of how important this was to all of us. So being able to do, you know, 18 months of work in about 3 months is, you know, amazing. And, you know, everyone brought their A game. There were, you know, as Marco said, there were, you know, a lot of nights that none of us got any sleep. We were constantly editing and, you know, making sure that everything was coming in on time. And, you know, it's something we're very proud of the final result.
I mean, and the product speaks for itself. You guys just recently announced that you guys are going back to another printing, right?
We are. Very exciting.
Yeah. The funny thing is I went to C2E2, and I have some friends that own 2 comic shops here in Florida. They own Uncanny Heroes in Lakeland and Tampa, and it's 3 guys, and they're really good friends. And I basically, I guess you could say I work part-time there. And so I went with them to C2E2, and so I was at all the Diamond Retailer Summit stuff. And so I was there when Lion Forge, on their presentation to the retailers, announced that it had gone out of print and it was going into a second print. So that was crazy. And of course, our table, we let off a huge, gigantic, like, cheer yell session.
That's awesome. That is really great.
Yeah, I remember Marco sending us the message, the official message, that it's going to a second printing, and, you know, we all just lost our minds.
Yeah.
Right. Because that makes the first printing that I have extra valuable, that I can sell it on eBay.
As long as all the money goes to Puerto Rico, you do what you got to do.
Neil, can you walk us through the story you wrote? I think it was a really great story, but where did you draw your inspiration from for it? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, of course. And, you know, kind of to piggyback before I get to my story, Jess, you touched on, you know, there's a lot of rich history of Puerto Rico. And over the course of working on this anthology, I realized how in our schools, we don't really learn about Puerto Rico, which is extremely, extremely unfortunate because there's such an amazing, rich history. There's a lot of tragedy. I mean, there's a lot to learn about Puerto Rico, and we don't really see that on a day-to-day in schools. So for me, this was a little challenging. You know, Derek, one of the other co-writers and co-editors and writers, he's literally been my bro for life for, I don't know, 10, 11 years now. And, you know, for me, when he asked me to be part of this, knowing what his family was going through, and also, you know, with Marco and Marco's family, Marco and I are newer friends, but, you know, he's a bro all the same. I was having a hard time trying to find the words because, you know, Puerto Rico is a very special place. But I don't have any family there who are affected by this. I have what I've heard from Marco and what I've heard from Derek. So for me, I kind of took a page from when Hurricane Sandy actually hit New Jersey. I'm New Jersey born and raised. And my father actually, there's a jetty on the Jersey Shore that he likes to go to, and I remember thinking how for him the Jersey Shore is so important to him growing up, and I focused on that with the same kind of story of a father taking his son to Puerto Rico to visit his parents. The father Adrian knows that his family is okay, but he's still not prepared to see what the state Puerto Rico's in, and he's with his 10-year-old son who is, seeing this, and you can see that the father's spirit of Puerto Rico is kind of dying a little bit because he's so devastated by, the tragedy of these two hurricanes, and without really ruining the ending, through his son Daniel, he kind of refines that spirit, and I think the one thing I learned the most over the course of this anthology and working on it is the Puerto Rican spirit is actually very strong. It might waver, but it never dies. And that was the message that I want to convey, and really find that energy, because I think it's so powerful.
I have to say that I think you absolutely nailed it. It was one of my favorite stories in the anthology.
Well, thank you.
Not to take away from anybody else's work. But the moment that hit me the hardest personally was the scene involving where he's sitting on the car with his father looking at the airplanes.
Yep.
Because that's what I used to do with my mom.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, because my father used to work at American Airlines. He used to work as a ramp attendant. So we would wait for my dad to get out of work, and that's what we would do. We would watch the planes leave, and we would talk about it. And like even thinking about it right now just takes me back to a point in my childhood, and it kind of almost makes me misty-eyed a little bit. So on that level, it really hit me personally. And throughout this project, there are a lot of streets that are recreated from Puerto Rico that I personally remember growing up around and spending my summers around. And you captured those moments of where, the news is covering, and I could go, oh man, I remember what that street was before it got hit with the storm. I remember what that little plaza was, or that little burger shack or something like that, or that little, restaurant, those little things that you don't think are really important, but they are part of your childhood, and you look back on them and you see them in disarray, and that hit me personally very, very much.
Definitely. And I mean, I was trying to be as authentic as possible too. I was doing tons of research. One thing you'll notice is I actually never say what town they go to, because I didn't think it ever needed to be said, because the message is still very clear, that no matter where you are, there is devastation. So I wanted to kind of hit that chord within people, like with you, with Marco. I know when Marco read the story, he told me he cried, and I was just like, wow, like that's powerful. But I really wanted to be as authentic as possible. And I actually remember saying to Derek and Marco, what do you call your grandparents, or what do you call your parents directly? I wanted to really have that feel, where my story is in English, but it does have the little subtleties of Spanish in there. Because, like I said, I want to hit that chord.
Yeah, that's one thing that I noticed in the book, is how the stories are all very authentic. As I said in the beginning, that I had little to no knowledge of Puerto Rico, to my embarrassment. And I mean, we have an Omnibro, Giovanni Menendez, who's still without power. He's not, otherwise he'd be on this broadcast, but he's still living with his grandmother because his house was torn apart, and he doesn't have consistent Wi-Fi. He does still have a job, which is probably pretty amazing in itself. But these stories were so authentic. And one thing I noticed, there were a couple of things that ran through all the stories, no matter what the story was about, without being a lecture. These stories weren't a lecture, but they were a lesson in Puerto Rico's history. And there's a kind of from what Giovanni tells me, politics seems to be a sport in Puerto Rico that everybody plays, although he doesn't particularly care for it. He'll probably sign on here in a little bit, and he can speak for himself. But the political, dating back to the 1500s to present day, there's a theme of politics. But I also noticed there's also the power of family and the power of food. Because Gio and, well, actually all the Omnibros, we're always talking about food because we love food. And that seemed, I noticed that there was a theme of how family, well, I guess that's true for any family, that a lot of times they structure themselves around food and the love that preparing the food represents.
Yeah. One of the great things about this anthology that we wanted to get across, and and I have to say it was one of the things that Desiree wanted to really get across. She wanted this to be something that was reflective of Puerto Rican culture and of history and of the things, the certain political things that happened in Puerto Rico, because it doesn't really get taught in schools. It's not something that really people have a deep knowledge of. One of the things I joked about when I was at C2E2 on a panel for Lionforge about this is that type of joke that a lot of Hispanics have, where they're like, most Americans think all Hispanics are Mexicans. We all not.
Oh, they're not.
So it's one of those things of like, she wanted this to be something that would ultimately, in the end, besides it doing good for Puerto Rico and selling a lot of copies, she also wanted it to be something that would be in libraries, school libraries, and taught in schools. And I think we got that across with a lot of the cultural and historical and political aspects on this book. But it was very much a priority to get that across.
Well, I think for me personally, it was kind of a little bit of a wake-up call where I grew up in the States. So I really didn't, in the education system, in the education system, they don't really teach you much about Puerto Rico. And then going through this anthology, I was like, oh, wow, I really don't know that much of my own culture and my own history. And partially part of that is because they never really taught it to me. They never really go into detail about the Jones Act or about Vietnam and the stories that are told in there. And I think that's a huge failure in our education system and a missing part of it, because we are Americans. And they pointed out in the book, 50% of Americans don't believe we are Americans. But we come over here, we vote, we fight in their wars, and we're involved in politics.
Yeah, I love the one of the stories I love the most. I think it was called La Casita. La Casita. I forgot what the rest of them, but it's basically about the mother, and she's in the military, and she goes to Puerto Rico with her daughter, and she goes to her parents' house, and they go through the house, and the little girl learns about the history of her family, and the past relatives that have served in the military. And I love that one because in my family, I come from a big military family, so literally I have family that goes back to World War I, serving in the military for the U.S. And a lot of people don't realize how much Puerto Ricans have given to the U.S. and how little in return we get, even when we're not asking for that much.
Yeah, that was a huge eye opener for me, for sure.
Yeah, I have sons of family that they serve, that they still serve, that they've served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam. I mean, my great grandfather fought in World War II. It goes back far. We've been involved in pretty much every major war in some form or another, but we don't get really mentioned.
Yeah. It's crazy. There's some stuff in here. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we didn't hear, I've pretty much read about before because my parents are very, at least politically minded.
Mhm.
But even when knowing the stuff that when you read it again and it's illustrated in a story, it's still one of those things that, as a Puerto Rican, you're just sitting there and you kind of get to this point where you're like, the anger rises, and you want to be like, have you ever seen Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle?
Yeah, I love that movie.
When they go through the drive-thru and Andy C. Anderson is like, Pookie, let's burn this place to the ground.
Yeah, I love that movie.
And that scene always goes in my head when, because I love comedy, so that scene always plays out in my head when I read anything political that upsets me. I'm always like, let's just burn it to the ground. When reading these stories, I'm just like, screw it, burn it all to the ground.
Yeah, that is one thing that you see in a lot of the stories that tell about the past, talk about the history, is the I don't know if the anger comes through, but it seems to be a kind of raw frustration with how Puerto Rico has been treated throughout the centuries, really, starting with the Spaniards. But I want to make sure the audience and the people that haven't read it understand that it's it's not a book that, as I said, it's not a book that lectures you, but it's a book that just presents a lot of viewpoints on basically what the history is of Puerto Rico. And if you didn't have any idea that the Spaniards came over and conquered it, that they imported slaves from Africa, and that Puerto Rico is really a polyglot culture. It pulls from many different cultures and areas of the world. It's really very diverse, and I was, I admit, I'm the first to admit that I don't know a lot of things. I'm supposedly supposed to know a lot about comic books, and I'm the first to say that I don't have the memory that any of my co-hosts do on, issues of X-Men from 1996. I'm not going to be the one to be able to tell you that. And I'm also I was not aware of how diverse and unique Puerto Rico was and is, and how difficult the situation is there now. I was aware because of I was aware because the news reports how difficult the situation was now, but I wasn't aware that historically it's been a battle almost from the very beginning.
Yeah, it's one of the things I love about the book and how it was presented after the stories were done. A lot of that goes to Hazel, is how in putting the book together, her and Desiree were the ones, if I'm not mistaken, that put the book together and then after everything was complete. Is how it presented to you this great mixture where it doesn't have a certain set of stories all up front. You get the political and historical and then fictional and autobiographical and the pinups. How they made it work where you're getting a variety of things, but nothing that makes it feel like someone's trying to get you to feel bad about something.
Right.
Because that wasn't our process with this book, to not make anyone feel bad. It was to inspire. As I think, like every single story, no matter what, they pretty much end with hope, and that was the thing. Because as Puerto Ricans, we've been through a lot. When you go from but the Tainos that were the first one there, to the Spaniards surviving, to slavery, to freeing themselves from the Spaniards, to being given over to the U.S., and the U.S. taking away the Puerto Rico monetary system, land, and being involved with the wars, what happened in Vieques years back with the bombing from the naval base, and all these variety of things. We've endured so much, and ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to hope. That you keep pushing for there to be a better day. And that's what I think. If the book in the end, if it's anything, it's about instilling that hope and that power to overcome no matter what. Because Puerto Rico for the past 150 years has been through so much, and still going through so much. I had my grandmother and aunt. They came down here last year to stay with us for a bit after the hurricane. They left and went back, and we were like, "You don't have to go back. You can stay here." But they wanted to get back to their places, and then my aunt, she ended up kind of regretting it because she's like, "The power keeps coming and going," and I hear from people that have been there that, like, if you're in more of the metropolitan area, the power's pretty good, and the more you go out, it goes in and out, and then the more, if you're in the mountainous areas and the more remote areas, they don't even have power. Their houses are still destroyed. And then to hear stuff like the issues with FEMA and all that, it's just ultimately at the end of the day, all you can have is hope, and trying to us having to help them out with this book and other organizations. At the end, when all said and done, if the government can't help you, then the only person who can help you is your fellow man and each other.
That's very well put. I think that also the book is not, because we've been highlighting a lot on the politics, but the book is not just about politics. It's about the culture, the food, the music, the history. It's very beautifully well put together. Like I already said, I learned a lot myself just going through it, and I think that a lot of these things, they can come off as a bit textbooky, and that wasn't the case in this book. It didn't feel like I was like doing homework or reading through an assignment that I had to do or something like that. It was very well written, and it was very well paced, and the stories, they were the appropriate amount of length. I didn't feel like any story dragged on too long, and I felt that every single story had a voice. It had its own thing to say and its own perspective on certain things. One of the ones that I wasn't even really aware of was the sterilization one. That one floored me. That one I was like, what? It completely caught me off guard when I read that story. I was like, I didn't even know that this had happened.
Yeah, that was a huge shock for me too. Because, again, like we've talked about a bunch so far tonight, you just don't learn about Puerto Rico in school. You don't hear any of this. It's kind of, pushed under the rug, where, it's just not talked about. And it's unfortunate. Like, people should know, like, what Puerto Ricans went through. What they did from a medicinal point of view, and like with contraceptives and all that stuff. I mean, it's awful. The whole thing is just really, really awful when you get into the bare bones of it.
The horror about that, when you're reading that story and you think about, other minorities and their treatment, how they were treated in the U.S., it paints this picture of, like, you're just one of many groups of people that have gotten, screwed over by the U.S., for lack of a better term. Like, when you think of, the stuff that happened to the Native Americans, the stuff that happened to the African Americans, and, the stuff that happened to the Japanese in World War II. There's a lot. There's just finding out about Puerto Rico is just like when you're younger and you find out about all this other stuff. And then if you're older and you don't know about what happened in Puerto Rico, you find out. It just, when you start looking at all the different groups, you just see that it's just, sadly, it paints a picture of what the U.S. does to its the minorities that live in the country, or that are part of the country through its association with the U.S.
Well, we just had Gabe join us. Gabe, how are you doing?
I'm good, Jess. You guys started without me? Come on.
You're only almost an hour late. You're fine.
Oh, fuck, man. I know, dude. Sorry about that. We had 2 conventions this weekend, C2E2 and Silicon Valley, and all the stock just came back. Not all of it. A fraction of it just came back. So I had to, like, unload this big-ass Penske trailer just now. But That's nothing compared to the discussion you guys are talking about, but the practical genocide of Puerto Rico.
One of the things I do want to talk about is we're talking about how it's just not political stories. Is one of the things. So with my story that I did of Myth and Monsters with Derek, Jamie, and DC, is one of the things I want to represent is some of my favorite stuff is, like I said, comedies and adventure films, and I'm a big Steven Spielberg fan. And one of the things I wanted to do was show that, like, we Puerto Ricans or any ethnic group, we have stories in us that are just like those stories that you love. I wanted to paint, with a Myth and Monsters, I wanted to paint a Coonies type tale that just happens to have where the family are Puerto Rican. But it's no different than E.T., which is a white family in, suburban America, or Goonies, which are a bunch of white kids in, I think it's an area in Seattle or something like that. And then their Asian, kid friend, going on a wacky adventure. And that's one of the things that, there's a lot of great creators, Puerto Rican creators out there, Mexican, Cuban, African American, all that. And, all these movies and stories that people love, those movies would be just as good if they had, minority characters. And for our story, I wanted to give people a story like that. That's why in that story, I remodeled the Chupacabra, where instead of being a goat sucker, it's like a furry little creature that these kids love, and they want to make it a pet. And then, they go against a Vejigante, and I changed up the Vejigante because it really didn't come out until, like, the Vejigante doesn't really appear until, like, hundreds of years later in Puerto Rican culture. But I made it, because the thing, like, mythology, like Greek and Roman and all that, is it gets modeled by the people and changed over time. So I was like, well, I'm going to take Taínos mythology and add the Vejigante, and this guy gets cursed, and, because he defied the gods, and he gets turned into a monster to guard this area. And I just wanted to do a fun tale that people, even kids, because it's really pretty much for kids, would get enamored by. And they would be like, this is the coolest thing ever. And, oh, crap, these kids are just like me. I see myself. And
are you guys, I know it's gone through a first printing already and on to a second printing. Have you felt that you've been embraced by the comic book community? Have you found you've gotten a lot of support, or has it been difficult to get your book distributed and out there?
No, I feel we've been pretty. I feel the stores, like, I remember when the book came out, I would sit there and go on Twitter and just do searches, or Facebook, and I was seeing on Facebook a lot of comic shops were posting, usually a lot of comic shops will be like, these are the books coming out tomorrow. But a lot of them were posting a separate post. They're like, hey, this book comes out tomorrow. This is what it's about. It's going to do a lot of good. Come by our shop. There was a lot of creators that were involved in the book that had signings at their stores. There was one creator who had 2 signings. It was, and he's going to kill me now, I don't remember his name, even though I saw him at C2E2 when I was there. He had he was signing at Graham Cracker Comics in Chicago, but like a lot of the creators, they had signings. I did a signing here at Uncanny Heroes. Eugene Selassie, he did a sci-fi story in there about Puerto Rico in the future. He just had a signing on Sunday for Puerto Rico Strong. He's going to something at the end of a month to support Puerto Rico Strong, and then I think he has something after that to support the book. So I feel the comic book community has really taken to the book. I just checked Comic-Con today because I'm a geek when it comes to industry numbers. I always got to know, like, what sales figures and, how the comic book business is doing. So they reported, I think it was for Puerto Rico Strong, we were number 12 in the top 100 graphic novels. And we sold like 2,200 copies, but that's 2,200 copies that, like, before the reorders came in. So I know we sold way more than that, because I know that wasn't 2,200 of the first print. I know the first print sold way more. I don't know the exact number, but I remember telling me it was way, way more than that number. So I don't think there's been any real issues. I'm sure, as with anything, there are comic shops that didn't order it, but that comes with anything, whether it's charity or an independent comic. I mean, that's just the way the industry is. But I haven't seen anybody be against it. I mean, which would kind of be hard. I mean, why would you take that stance?
I just wondered how difficult it might be for a book like this to get published and distributed, since it was so almost last minute and so put together so quickly. It's kind of not a miracle, but it's kind of really surprising how well something like this on such a tight timeline is done. So I think it sounds like you were really embraced by the community.
Yeah, and that goes a lot to Lionforge and David Stewart, the owner of the company, who's awesome, and Carl Reed and Rich Johnson, the president, and so many people from the marketing department, Jeremy Atkins, David Funches, more people than I can name. I mean, that was, at the end of the day, while we did the work of getting the creators and the creators working on the stories and putting the book together and all that, everything out came to them because, you know, their whole getting the word out there, going to places, marketing in places that usually wouldn't. I mean, that's all down to them. That's that powerhouse of Lionforge as a publisher that, you know, they want to put out comics for everyone, which is their model, which is a great model. You know, that's for them. If it was like, if this was done on our own, I don't think we would have sold anywhere near as many comics. And well, as good as them, I mean, they really pushed hard not only to reach out to the comic book industry, but also to reach out to, you know, other industry, library associations and, you know, school associations, things like that, you know, that you normally don't, comic book industry doesn't normally go out to, and other channels, and, you know, the stuff that Jeremy did, reaching out to Washington Post, and then from Washington Post, Dan Rather ended up, you know, retweeting, not even retweeting, he ended up doing an original tweet using the Washington Post link about Puerto Rico Strong. And as Neil can tell you, that was an insane day when I'm checking Twitter, and I was like, did Dan Rather just tweet about Puerto Rico Strong?
Yeah, we all kind of lost our minds at that. We're like, wait, how did that even happen? Like, who knew who to get him to tweet about that? But and I think even to this day, it's still a little bit of a mystery. But that was just so exciting.
You know, people say number 12, and they hear that, they probably think, oh, well, that's not a huge number. But when you think about it, you're going against DC, Marvel, Image, and your publishing company. I believe the name again was Lionforge, if I'm not mistaken. Your publishing company, it's not that it's just not as well known as those companies that are out there right now. And for such a small publishing company to land so close to the top 10 is incredible. It means that you definitely had an impact on the market, and people really were wanting to read this material and support the cause.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. Like, when you put the book out there, and you go on social media and you see, because again, I that part of me that's like, I gotta know what people think. And you're seeing people tweeting about it and retweeting about it or Facebooking it and other stuff like that. And not people that are just, you know, Puerto Rican or Latino. You know, you're seeing people that are, you know, outside of those groups talking about it. And before the book came out, and then when the book came out, and then after it's been out, the reviews that we've been getting on Amazon and Goodreads, I mean, it's doing so well across the board that, you know, it makes the cynical in me non-cynical for about a minute.
Well, I mean, something like that with this kind of cause transcends the idea of it being like a Puerto Rican thing or a Hispanic thing. The comic book community has always been extremely passionate about helping people. I mean, there was the graphic novel that helped the shooting survivors from the club in Orlando. There's another graphic novel coming out for the shootings here in Las Vegas that's coming out pretty soon. So all these types of like tragic events are always the precursor to this huge movement in the comic book industry. So that's always something that's great to see, that it transcends what's familiar to everybody in terms of who they are and their race and their family. But it comes out to the idea of just people needing help who hit a tragic moment in their life. And this is something that's helping everybody else out. So that's always a good positive thing to look at.
Definitely. And I think, you kind of hit it on the head. The comic book industry and all the fans and everyone out there, we all come together as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. We all come together in times of need and support. And it's something that's, the industry does get a lot of crap here and there. But at the end of the day, when it comes down to, doing what's right and supporting, we do it better. We're one of the ones who does it the best.
That's one of the things. Sorry, I'm replying to Desiree. She just hit me up. She had an emergency. That's why she wasn't on this. So she's asking me if we're still on.
Yeah, tell her to jump on if she's ready.
Yeah, that's what I just told her right now. So I have two loves in my life, two mistresses: comic books and film. And one of the things I love about comic books is it's such a powerful medium. And a lot of people don't realize that because there's still a stigma in the U.S. Even though you got all these superhero movies out and superhero TV shows, there's still a stigma in the U.S. of what comic books are. Just like there's a stigma in the U.S. of what cartoons are.
Mm-hmm.
But comic books are such a powerful medium and such a passionate medium. And it's just when you see, like you said, Love is Love, and the one that's coming out for the Vegas shooting in Puerto Rico Strong, it just shows you what happens when we all come together and what we can accomplish and the good that we can do. And comic books are such a great tool because they're a marriage. They're probably the perfect medium because it's a marriage of writing, words, storytelling that are written and visual. And when you're reading a comic book, you can read one quick if you wanted to, but if you're reading it to actually read it, everything around you just sort of disappears when you read a comic book.
Oh, yeah.
You get totally invested to what's happening. And that's what I love about, Puerto Rico Strong and, anything that I read that's a comic book is it totally just encapsulates you into a totally different world where your imagination takes over. And a really good comic book, it just sometimes just really gets you where you gotta take a moment and just be like, damn, that was really cool. Or, oh man, it's kind of messed up. I gotta walk away because I'm about to, have a tear come down my face.
Well, you get that and so much more with Puerto Rico Strong. I mean, there's got to be I didn't count them all, but it had to be a 20 different stories. So there's 20 different chances for you to transcend into a different world, into somebody else's life. And that's what was so great about this. I know I came in late, so I don't know if Jess talked about this, but Jess and I was talking about it before, that there's so much. I learned so much about Puerto Rico that I never knew was a thing if it wasn't for this comic book. I didn't know about the sterilization. I didn't know about all the different kind of the times that it's been colonized and taken over and all the tax bullshit that the U.S. puts on Puerto Rico and took away from them and everything else like that. And that's just another powerful thing about this book you guys put out.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, so I have my copy in my room, and I think the last time I flipped it was before I left to go to C2E2, and I don't know, because it's still one of those things where you when you look through it, it's still surreal because it feels like this was ages ago when we started it. How much was done in such a short little time. And when you're just looking through it, it's kind of this weird feeling of man, we did this and we opened up a lot of people's, because there's a lot of people like you, fellow Puerto Ricans and other fellow Latinos, and even especially people that weren't, Latino or Puerto Rican, African American people or white people or Asian people that are just wow. It was just one of those things they couldn't believe that happened to an island filled with, American people that at the end of the day are, the responsibility of the U.S., but they couldn't believe that ever happened. which is crazy when you think about it. Some of the stuff that we tell you about in that book. But there's also those great stories like Neil's, and Anthony's and Charles, La Casita, which I'm sure if they're listening to this or watching this, they're like, give us the full name, which I forget. But it's just one of those things that I think the best thing we did was tell, even if it's a political or a historical story, every story in here is a personal story. It comes off like a personal story. Like you guys said, it doesn't come off like we're trying to teach you, a lesson and drill it into you. Be like, don't forget.
Well, I also think that, while still a comic, we are subtly telling you that this is almost really like an educational book, for you to learn about a culture that you don't ordinarily learn in school about, or even like my family who didn't know a lot of this, and they're not comic book readers, and they were just so blown away by everything that was in this story, and they learned so much. So, while it's definitely not a textbook by any means, it's kind of nice to think about it as that nice educational book that's disguised as a comic, so to speak.
I like
you are
how
going to walk away learning something.
I like how I didn't pull any punches, and it called out the names of so much of the government and so much senators and Trump and anybody else. Not to turn this into like a political thing, but there was no. Everybody was held accountable. Like there was a lot of these stories that actually dropped names of people who were penny pinching or who took money from this and who actually became more financially well off because of the tragedy, because they took the money or they took the funding or they took the supplies and stuff like that. And that's what was great about this as well, is that you guys aren't afraid to name names and call people out and let this actually be shown in the correct light.
Right. And I think a lot of people are really just angry. And, while you have, where my story is lighter, it's not political. It's just, at its core, it's a story of a father and son going home. You can really tell in a lot of the other stories that there is that anger. And that's where that bit of that politics did come into play. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I think it needed that. I was a little originally when we were talking about this. I thought we should kind of stay a little bit, maybe not political, but you know what? There's no reason for us not to be. There's no reason for people to let off the anger and their aggravation for the lack of help that we've been giving Puerto Rico, and it's really reflected.
Yeah, if you're going to do it right.
Right.
Don't hold yourself back. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not only that, but it's a thing where, let's call it for what it is. There are still people on the island without power and water. That is a thing that is still going on. My grandfather, who lives in the mountains in Gawa, he only got power back probably a month ago. There's still a small section of the island that doesn't have power, but you don't hear about it in the news. It's not covered.
No.
Well, we're all affected by this because of Gio. I don't know if you guys talked about it, but Gio lives out in Puerto Rico right now, and the only time he can communicate with us is at work, because where he works at a radio station is the only time he has power or internet. So.
It's funny you guys bring up some of the more political stories where we name people. Is when we got the there's only none of those stories made me think like, oh, we shouldn't print this. Like all those, I was like, yeah, let's do this. Page black and white story from Tom Bellin that had Trump in it. All the crap Trump did. That was the one story we got where I was like, oh man, this book isn't going to get bought by anybody, or it's not going to make any comic shops. We're all going to disappear in the middle of the night.
Yeah, we were definitely all afraid of that.
But it's not all that either, like you were saying. There's a lot of personal stories. There's that one story about the family and their military history throughout Puerto Rico and throughout all the different wars. There's broken promises, helping hand. There's a lot of Neil, I think yours was Hope, right? That's the one.
Hope is my story.
Yeah, and that was a beautiful story about taking your son.
Thank you.
And the whole sitting at the airport watching the airplanes take off and land and develop stories of where these people are going and where they're coming from and stuff like that. So this isn't just an angry letter to the government or anything like that. There's a lot of passion about the culture, learning. Yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned the Goonies, Marco. That's the vibe I definitely got from that story when I read it. It's kind of like the Goonies, kind of like a young story, and I really love that when I read today a lot.
You were echoing a little bit there, Luis. I'm not sure you picked up on what you said.
Hello?
Okay.
There, better.
Yeah.
Like I was saying, it's funny that you mentioned the Goonies earlier, Marco, because that was a story, like the Goonies and kind of E.T. and those childlike fantasies that you have. That was one that I related to a lot because I do remember, like I said, spending my summers in Puerto Rico, and we would go around and we would make up like these stories and these myths, and we would hear parents talk about like these old myths. Like there's a story in Puerto Rico about somebody that fell in this crevice. It's like near a beach. I'm not remembering it 100% correctly, but like if you yell out the name, like the water splashes on you or something like that. I can't remember it like off the top of my head, and it's bothering me. But I do, like, I have fond memories of that stuff, and you guys really did capture that time period for me.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing that I love. And the story that we told is showing this idea of, fictional, adventure Puerto Rican stories that, anybody can enjoy. Because, there's, like when you watch movies, one of my favorite directors is Guillermo del Toro and Robert Rodriguez and all that. And, my whole thing with that story is I remember this when I lived in Puerto Rico. There was this filmmaker they interviewed on TV who was doing all these short films in Puerto Rico. He did this really cool one that I remember that dealt with like it's Puerto Rican the samurai armor or something. I don't remember what it was about. This was like, we're talking like 97 or something. So this is 20 years ago when I was watching this. And I guess he was getting a lot of heat on him. And they were talking about like, oh, if you would ever leave Puerto Rico to go to California, and one of the things he said was like, oh no, if Hollywood wants me, they're gonna have to, come here. I'm not going over there. And I always wondered, since watching that thing, whatever happened to that guy, if he ever like left to go become part of Hollywood, or if like maybe he got to, stay in Puerto Rico and do what he wanted to do. So, in thinking about that, I wanted to like. Because I saw a lot of the stories that we were doing, had these personal, historical, and, very biographical. And so I wanted to do something that, made me think of that guy with this Puerto Rican, the samurai armor. And so I wanted to do something that was fantastic like that. That would be really like stand out when you're reading the book.
Kind of just shying away for a quick second from the book. How did you guys get started in the industry at first? Because we have a lot of fans and we have a lot of people that they want to become comic book creators. They want to become comic book artists or writers, and they don't necessarily know how to get their foot in the door. I know everybody's story is different, but yeah.
Mine is long and non-traditional, so I'll try to make it as short as possible. I started trying to get into business once I graduated high school in 99. I have wanted to be in comic books since I was a teenager and living in New York. I think it was like 94 when I was like, I know what I want to do, and it's make comics. And my parents were like, oh dear God, why?
Ay, no podía ser abogado.
Yeah, right, yeah. Because before that, the whole thing was, I'm going to be a veterinarian. And my mom was like, yes. That's a job that has a good future, steady income, And then when I said I wanted to make comics, it was like, God just like literally like punished her. So straight out of high school, it was one of those things of just, pursuing it, like going online. Like, I mean, when I switched from wanting to be an artist to a writer, it was, practicing my craft and then going online, meeting other fellow independent creators that were looking to get in the biz, talking to other people, Because one of the things about comic books, whether you're an artist, a writer, a letterer, or a colorist, or an inker, is it can be sometimes a pretty lonely business because it's you by yourself. You know what I mean? When you're crafting these stories or doing the work, you're not all sitting around on a table, working on pieces of it at a time. So it's good to have, when you're going to go into comics, it's good to be going into this with a group of people, with the same goals in mind, because it makes it a lot easier. And you have someone to turn to and talk about, and you can, build off of each other, help each other, and support each other. But for me, it was a lot of trial and error. I remember one time asking a creator, and I forgot who the creator is, a question and getting yelled at for asking the question, which is it was a really stupid thing I asked. And it was just one of those things like, you learn from it. And early 2000s, I almost got a comic book published, funny enough, back then by the now editor-in-chief of Marvel, C.B. Cebulski, when he had his own independent label called Fanboy Inc. Before he even started working with Marvel. He came from the world of manga. He worked with like CPM, I think it was CPM Manga, and he had formed his own little publishing thing. And I was going to have something through him, and then that sort of fell apart after there was a big hit, I remember, in the early 2000s in the indie market. Then after that, it was a lot of trial and error. Fast forward to like 2010, I started to put my money where my mouth is and pay for an artist and put out a book. From that, it led to, putting stuff on a website, to, talking to more creators, publishers, handing out my book to other creators, getting quotes. A lot of the I never really went the traditional route. I did a lot of the stuff they tell you you're not supposed to do in trying to get into the comic book industry. And then eventually in 2015, I went to WonderCon in California. I was living in California for a year, and I went to WonderCon because Brandon Easton, who's a comic book writer, he was like, "Come on down, I'll introduce you to some of the people at Lionforge." And I was like, "Awesome." So I came down, gave them my business card, took theirs, and then ended up moving back to Florida, contacted them, did some work for Lionforge in 2015 and 2016. And then I did an issue of Grim Tales of Terror for Zenescope, their anthology horror book. And then after that, I didn't do anything for a while. And then we did Puerto Rico Strong. And then from Puerto Rico Strong to now, I'm going to have quite a bit of stuff coming up in 2018 and 2019 in the comic book business. Something I can talk about, but
yeah.
The one thing I want to tell when you're pursuing this business is, and this saying gets said a lot in the film world, and a lot of creative endeavors it gets said, this isn't a race, it's a marathon. You have to be willing to realize that you're probably not going to make it in comics in 2 years' time or 5 years' time, or maybe not even 10 years' time. From my pursuing it in 1999 after high school, and then pursuing it on and off, sometimes steadily, sometimes years on end not pursuing it, I'm finally getting to the point where I'll be doing a lot of things in the next year to come. I think it's when a lot of people, when they go into business, they expect, like, I'll put out a book, the publishers will love it, Marvel will be hoisting me over their shoulders, they'll be making me the top writer on a book, and there we go, it's all said and done. And
you're writing Avengers.
Yeah, and it's not. It's a long, hard road. Expect that you might have to work another job while doing this. There's going to be sleepless nights, that there's going to be a lot of frustration and anger, and that, there's also the possibility that it might not happen. But if you want it bad enough, and if it's the only thing you can imagine yourself doing for the rest of your life, then you have to keep pursuing it. I mean, David Walker, who's a fantastic writer in this business, who worked for Marvel and DC and Dynamite and Lionforge, he didn't really make it into this business until I think he was in his late 40s,
Mm-hmm.
And, and that says something right there. I mean, not me, I'm 37, and now I'm finally starting to get my way into this industry.
my path was a little bit different than Marco's. I was always a comic book guy. I actually remember like getting the death of Superman and completely and totally destroying the black case that came in because why not? That's, you know, when you're like in the 3rd grade or 2nd grade. And then also my friend threw Age of Apocalypse my way, and I was like, I want to read comics and I want to be in this industry. So I always kind of kept in the back of my mind while also trying to figure out how to get in. And I ended up, fortunately, getting an internship for Gable Brothers Publishing back in 2007. From there, went on to become their marketing manager, which is where I met Derek, our one of our other co-editors and collaborators. And even after I left them, I went to work for DC Comics for a little bit in the ad sales department, but I was still not really in the writing area. And I kind of actually got to a point where I realized, you know what, I have to get serious and I have to find like a day job where I can really just pursue, you know, make money and then also work at writing and honing that craft. And Derek was always a big pusher of me to keep writing and writing. And actually, Puerto Rico Strong is my first published work. The first 10-page story that actually has ever been published. So this whole thing is very exciting. And especially to be the first thing I did to be part of something with so much meaning behind it, and with the overall goal of helping you know, Puerto Rico and their kind of need. But, you know, something I would say to anyone out there who was trying to break into the industry is really never give up hope. Kind of to Marco's point, if you look at Bendis, if you look at a lot of the big names, a lot of them didn't really like break in until, you know, their late 30s, early 40s, and really like explode. And I just turned 32, so, you know, I kind of feel like I'm at a good point where, you know, the next phase is going to be really fun. As Marco said, you know, we have some stuff that him and I are working on. Can't really talk about right now, but, you know, some exciting other things. But, you know, you just can't lose hope.
No, that's good. I hope to see you guys on more, you know, some more books and stuff coming out in the future. Are you guys doing any? I don't know if you talked about it before. You guys doing any more shows? Any more conventions coming up this year?
I want to say probably, because there's a lot of things in the works right now dealing with Puerto Rico Strong that I unfortunately can't talk about, and there's a lot of things going on with stuff that we're involved with together and separately in this business. So I'm hoping the next show I'll be at is San Diego book
Cool.
publisher. But as an actual, like, to be able to say which ones, I can't say 100% sure.
Oh, cool, man! I hope to see you at San Diego. I'm gonna try and finagle my way in this year with the store and all. So
yeah, I mean, I'll probably be in New York, but I think 2019 is going to be the year of the cons.
Are either of you planning to be at MegaCon in a few months?
Yes. Oh, well, okay, hold on. Take it back.
Marco, we gotta grab a beer. We gotta grab a beer, man.
I know 100% for sure I'll be at MegaCon.
All right, hit me up, man. We'll grab a beer and we'll grab some food.
gotta go to Juniors, man. Gotta go to Juniors.
I will be there for that. I don't ever miss a MegaCon. That's like, you know, come on, man. Hometown. That's hometown big con.
We'll go to Juniors, man. We'll kill some burgers.
Awesome.
Damn it! Now I'm gonna go to MegaCon again. Just for the juniors, man. Just for the juniors.
I introduced this man, Gabe, to a Cuban sandwich. He's never had one before, and now he's got like a fever for them.
What?
They're amazing.
Yeah, luckily I got a couple of customers here who are great chefs, and they bring me Cuban sandwiches all the time now.
One of my favorite places for Cuban sandwiches. So I live half an hour out from Tampa, and the town that's closest to me before I hit Tampa is a town called Brandon. And so there's a Spanish supermarket that used to be owned by Puerto Ricans, but now it's owned by, I think, the Dominican family. Mm-hmm. And anytime someone's like, well, I want a good Cuban, I'm like, let me take you to the place with the best Cubans you're ever going to have in your life. and they make the Cubans, because as you know about a Cuban sandwich, it's an art. That's how you make the sandwich.
Mm-hmm.
You put too much of the wrong meat, you just screw the balance. And especially if you don't use the right, mixture of mayo and mustard. I have a Cuban sandwich once where they put no mayo, and I was like, "What is this?"
Oh, Cuban.
Yeah.
My girl is Cuban, so she gets very picky with Cuban sandwiches.
Nice.
So, where do you guys see yourselves go? You said you couldn't talk about some of your future projects, but ultimately, where do you want to be? Do you want to have your own independently produced stuff? Do you have dreams of writing X-Men, or what's your dream? What's your dream consist of for the next, say, 5 years?
Well, we're working on our own imprint that we can we will eventually divulge more information. We're still in the planning stages and getting things together. In terms of dream projects, though, if I had the opportunity to write anything, it'd probably be Wolverine, just because he's always been my favorite character.
What's your Wolverine pitch, man? What's your Wolverine pitch?
Actually, funny enough, that when I was younger, I was writing a movie script. Not that I knew what I was doing, and the whole idea was based on Sabretooth, and it took place in a bar, and it had Sabretooth coming to fight Wolverine on his birthday every year, and it was all going to be centered around that, and why he's always fighting Wolverine, why he wants to kill him, why he took Silver Fox, why he took all these other characters. But the opening was going to be one big bar brawl. But I mean, that was ages ago that I wrote that.
Like Neil said, me, Neil, and Derek are working on this imprint thing. On the independent end, I got stuff going with, I can't say who I got stuff going, but I got stuff going with 2 good independent publishers, and I'm looking forward to, making inroads with other independent publishers. When it comes to the big 2, I am nowhere near against it, because not that I focus on it a lot, but I do have a notebook filled with a 9-issue Killer Batman story.
Nice.
With notes for The Flash. My favorite superhero is Bart Allen Impulse. My favorite comic is The Flash. I am an X-Men fanatic. There we go. My favorite Flash, though, is Wally West.
Yes.
I'm not a big fan of Barry Allen.
This show's over.
Wait till we tell you your favorite Robin. That's my favorite part.
Oh, my favorite Robin? The best Robin of all time, Jason Todd.
Okay, this show's over 5 minutes ago.
Where's the hang up button on here?
Derek and I yell at Marco all the time. We tell him Tim Drake is the best Robin, and Marco, tooth and nail, fights us every time. That's Jason Todd.
I'm just Jason Todd is the only one who beat Batman in his own game. I don't remember any of the other Robins being Batman in his own game. But yeah, I mean, I've got notes. I've told friends I've told friends, I've gone through explaining how I would do the Return of Cyclops, story.
He told us some of that. It was awesome.
One of my things that I love the most, always saying, is I'm a big proponent of yes, Cyclops was right. I have nothing wrong with what Cyclops did in any of that book. But yeah, I'd love to write for the big 2. It's not one of those things you think about all the time, because I think it's better to not think about it and dwell on it. It's just, do the work, put out the work out there. And if they want you, they'll eventually come for you, or, you do the thing the thing that you do at conventions, which, you schmooze the editors. And eventually you get your way in. But I would just love to be working in this industry as a pro, and just putting out really good work, creator owned and work for hire, and just making a great living off of it. That would be my ultimate goal in comics and pushing forward a lot of great comics that have Latin and other ethnic leads in the roles of the stories.
I would love to see that. That's a very missing part, I think, in comics. There's not a lot of Hispanic characters at all. I mean,
And
ourselves sometimes. There's only a few, really. I mean, who was the Puerto Rican Avenger? White Tiger.
yeah. And you know, and I'm a big proponent of doing that. But I want characters that like one of the things that, and I guess in a way it's sometimes controversial, and in other ways it's not. But a lot of people always get super excited when they're like, oh, this character like Captain America or Iron Man or you know, any character gets replaced with an ethnic character, and you know, there's people that are happy and there's people that are mad, and I'm in the middle of like, I don't really like it because I feel it's almost like, you know, you're getting crumbs thrown at you, you know,
right.
Establishment. They're like, you want a Puerto Rican hero? Here is this popular character now, Puerto Rican taking over, and I'm just like, man, I'd rather have my own. I'd rather you create an original Puerto Rican hero, or take a character you already had that's Puerto Rican and make them a premier character instead of, you know, giving me a character that's already popular and you're just using that name and then just being like pushing the character of, you know, making the character Puerto Rican just so that you can be like, haha, see, we got something for you. Give us your dollars.
Well, yeah, it's like with Ghost Rider. They made a new Ghost Rider who was Mexican.
Robbie Reyes.
LA, yeah. And then the only other Mexican character out there was Skin from Gen 13, who had just loose skin as a power.
I am such a huge.
They should bring him back.
I'm such a huge Ghost Rider fan that when they created that new Ghost Rider, my friends, they thought it was so funny because I would sit there and I'd be like, does he have a car? He's not called Ghost Driver?
Actually, that's another dream project I would love to do. I would love to bring back Danny Ketch.
And right? And Danny Ketch is my Ghost Rider. And you know, and I call, you know how they have Gyno, which is Godzilla in name only, that name they use for the American Godzilla, the Roland Emmerich one, the horror. Right. So that's the name I use for, you know, the Ghost Rider that drives the car. I was like, that's Ghost Rider in name only. It's not a real Ghost Rider. I won't have
it. Jess, any more questions?
No, I guess maybe we should just talk about where you can get this book. I mean, besides your local comic book store, is it available online or digitally, or how can people find this besides their local comic book store?
Amazon. So besides your local comic book store, you can go Amazon Kindle. If you're digital, you can go Amazon Kindle.
Comixology.
If you're a person who doesn't want to enter a brick and mortar store because the outside world scares you, you can go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble online, and you can order through there. You can go into any bookstore if there's any left, like Books A Million, Barnes and Noble again. Any place that sells new books will have the book. It came out March 14th in comic shops, but then it came out, I believe it was April 2nd in bookstores.
And I'd also like to bring up that you can find Puerto Rico Strong on our sponsor's website, instocktrades.com. I have a link in the description of this video where you can get it, and it's less than $10. It's like 25% off on In-Stock Trades right now.
Yes, I love that. That's a good deal. That's a similar. That's my friends.
It's cheaper than Amazon. Just to throw it out there.
My friends who own a couple of comic shops here in Florida, that's what they do their trades at, 25% off all the time. And I'm like, that's such a good thing because it makes you not want to go to Amazon. You can just go in the store and grab them.
And,
that's right. Support your local comic book store, everybody.
And 100% of the proceeds go to Puerto Rico, correct?
Yes, it's Lion Forge is working with United Way from Puerto Rico. David Stewart, who owns Lion Forge, his family has a long history of working with United Way and helping out individuals and groups in need. So 100% of all the money is going to, I think it's like 3 or 4. It's a variety of children's programs for kids affected on the island. And I believe also kids that are in the U.S. that left the island, you know, because I know they were telling me over the weekend there was like 5,400 kids that were in Orlando from the island after the hurricane. Their LineForge also, when they announced the first print selling out, they also announced, because they had originally announced that they were going to match up to 25,000 in sales, and after they announced the first print sold out, they announced that they're now going to match up to 50,000.
Nice.
Buy a lot of paper towels.
We have a story.
Yeah, you did. Well, you guys should feel. I know you didn't do it to feel really good about yourselves, but you should feel really good about yourselves. You've accomplished an amazing feat to help somebody and some people out that are really in desperate need of your help, and to pull it together with the quality writing and the really quality art and really quality coloring too. I loved how brightly colored a lot of the stories were. You guys definitely should feel good about yourselves for what you created.
Hey, did we spotlight any of the book on here?
If you're talking about my taking a chance and screen sharing, I did not do that. If you want to do that, you can.
Yeah, because I unlike you, Jess, I make sure I have all my porn on shutdown.
It's shut down. Do you want me to highlight you and you want to show some things?
Yeah, I mean, when I do the screen share, it'll just highlight me anyways. So give me a second.
Oh, okay.
Soon. All right, let's get this started because there's some beautiful stuff on here I wanted to showcase. So here was one of my favorite books that just right out the gate. It was Here, which is the first one in the anthology itself, which is a great little just story with some history about Puerto Rico itself, and of course some work on the devastation of what's currently going on. I mean, all the airplanes, all the airlines raised their rates on Puerto Rico to like outrageous amounts when a hurricane was about to hit. Here's one of my favorite pieces. This is a beautiful. I don't know who the artist is. I can't read the signature.
It's Daniel. Hold on. Give me 2 seconds because I will pull up his name here real quick because I have him in Messenger. Because it's Daniel Elizalde Oquendo, and he lives in Puerto Rico. And when he was talking to me about that piece, if you notice that piece right after it has a write-up, that talks about the piece, because he had told us that for him doing that was because he had so much anger and emotions and just all this stuff that happened after the hurricane, that it was like an exorcism, him doing that piece.
No, I can see that, and I'm glad that you guys, and there's so many of these other artists who have this ability to kind of, focus your anger and your frustrations out on something like that. A lot of people don't have that kind of an outlet, so it's great to see just this beautiful work coming out of it. This is my absolute favorite art in the book, just because I love the crumbled up paper look. I'm assuming that's probably all done in Photoshop. I don't think it'd be that easy to watercolor over crumbled paper, but just the look and the tactile feel, awesome.
Yeah, Ariella, she drew that story. She's quite up there in the business. I know she's doing stuff with Aftershock and some other publishers, and she did a way better than I was expecting job on that story.
Yeah, this one here, Pastilles Grandes, is great. This is like the first real, like, for me, kind of walk down of the history of Puerto Rico from the very, very beginnings with the original settlers and everything like that. But it's just told in just this great futuristic style where I'm assuming it's a teacher who's taking their students to like a museum, and it's a total VR environment.
Mm-hmm.
I'll scroll through some of this. Here's a history lesson of some of like the taxations and some of the rules with the whole taxation law with the U.S. I mean, this is great stuff. I mean, we'll flip through some more of the artwork and everything, but let's give everybody a chance to see what they have, because we already have people in the chat who are already buying this book as we speak.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to kind of pass this around for everybody as well.
So many different beautiful styles and
Yeah.
different uses of art in this book.
Yeah, that I have to say comes down again to Desiree, because in my mentality of being, like everyone has their big period when you grow up reading comic books that, is the period that kind of makes you the comic book creator, comic fan they are. And mine was, being a teenager in the 90s, and the image boom and, and all that stuff.
You're right there with me, Marco, man. We are separated brothers, bro.
So in my thing, when I was contacting creators, I was contacting, people you more expected. Like we got on here, Fabian Nicieza, he did a story. Tony Bedal, he did a story. And, these are creators known for working on these Marvel and DC books, and I reached out to some other ones. And Desiree was like, those are all awesome. Don't get me wrong. I love those. But she's like, let's think outside the box when it comes to writers and artists. Let's think of people that are known, some novelists or, webcomic creators, political activists, so graffiti artists, things like that are just outside of the system, because it'll bring that audience and it'll bring that notice and it'll make this something different. So that was all up to Desiree, who brought this really nice variety and this stuff that was just very unique to the book.
Yeah, and here's your story, Marco, of Myth and Monsters.
There's that creature. I think I called him Chupa.
Yeah, no, the artwork on here is fantastic too. I forgot the artist's name.
Jones. We have a story. So he did our story, and we had an artist who was doing Vida Ayala's story. Fantastic writer. Vida is working with DC, and Vida's artist, there was an issue, and so we had to look for another artist. And this was literally like a week and a half before the book was going to printer. So it's literally like this story might not make it in. And we're all like, oh God, because like Lineforge, and the promoting the people involved, one of the people that they focused on besides Fabian and Tony Bendad and all that, the more bigger ones was Vida Ayala. And so I was like, hold on, let me contact Jamie. He's friends with Vida. Let me see if he can come in, since he already finished our story, and help out this one. So I contacted Jamie and I said, yo, I have a problem. He said, what's up? And because Jamie lives here in Florida, he was with me at the signing that was like a few weeks ago. And I was like, so here's the issue. Do you think you can do this? And he was like, I goes for Vida. And he was like, let me check my schedule. And then like 2 seconds later, he's like, all right, I'm in. And he did Vida's story, the pencils, inks, the color that he used on them. He did her story in about a week.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, this is beautiful stuff for it to be just like a week. I mean, imagine what this guy can do if he had way more time.
I love that one.
Yeah. So much great art.
And here's Neil's story with Hope that I really enjoyed.
The funny thing about this, you see that character right there, the father?
Yeah.
So if you look at my story, there's a character that looks like him. And then there's another story, there's a character that looks like him. And then and all these characters look like our friend and co-editor Derek. So literally, we're laughing because they looked like Derek. And there was even somebody when we were posting images from the book, and when it came out and people were posting images, one of Derek's, I don't know if it was sister Neil or a friend of his, that was like, Derek, what are you doing in this book?
Yeah. Well, even my family who knows Derek, they're like, wow, Derek was really popular in this graphic novel. And I was just like, well, I guess.
we would joke and we'd be like, Derek, you are the proto Puerto Rican. You're the Puerto Rican from which all Puerto Ricans came from.
The Hitchcock of Puerto Ricans. Yeah, but this Hope story is one of my favorite ones. I was talking about that earlier. This is great. There's just so much great work in here. And like I said, it's got to be like 20 plus different stories and like essays in here, and just so much in here that you get. I mean, it's an anthology, so you're going to get stories that you love. You're going to get stories that you like. You're going to get, a wide variety of artwork and storylines and everything else. And it's, what is it? Something like over 200 pages. So that's a pretty nice size.
I think it's 202. And the thing about that is I'm so glad we got at the $12.99 price point, because one of my big things that I kept pushing and reminding, I was like, you cannot put this book out at, because my goal is like, we should do like 100 and whatever, something. I think I was thinking like 150 pages for like $9.99. Because like, even though it's a charity book and people want to help out, if you tell somebody this book is $20, people are kind of like, you know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
Even if you get a discount at an online retailer or an in-store retailer. But for a book that's $12.99, then you're like, oh, well, with a discount, it's $10. Or if you go on Amazon, or even to just buy it for $12.99 from a comic book store that sells at a regular price, that gets you to be like $12.99 for 202 pages. That's a great deal. And it almost becomes like an impulse buy.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you guys are focused and considered what the price is going to be, because that's always a factor for everything. But yeah, so yeah, there's some great artwork, great stories in there, everybody, and I hope that helps out there.
Good job, Gabe.
And there's Jess.
Yeah, wait, and there you are.
Stop. There you go. Motherfucker.
Okay. Well, good. This has been great. We really appreciate you guys donating your time to us for this book, and we're thrilled that you guys could come on with us to promote it, and I hope that OmniBros has helped you promote the book a little bit more. Maybe you'll see a spike in sales because of our far-reaching reputation.
I mean, thanks for having us on here. I mean, this has been great. I love doing stuff like this, especially when you're doing stuff like this with people that like love comic books like you do. So it's a lot better. It's always great talking about this book. And, I was going through the chat bit, reading people's, comments and stuff like that. And it's always seeing the reactions of other people and the curiosity. And, I mean, to know that there's people out there now buying this based on this is just like the best thing to know. We know when it comes to this book and what it's aiming for.
Well, we're just genuinely very pleased that you guys could come on board with us tonight, and we wish you the best of luck with your second printing, and I hope you get to go to a 10th printing on this book. That would be great.
That would be. I would. If it ever gets to that point, you're just gonna see a video of me running around this house, just like screaming.
Well, good. I'm gonna hold you to that. If it goes to a 10th printing, I'm gonna want to see that.
Hey, Marco, you said that you were a fan of Impulse. Are you? Did you know? Or are you gonna pick up the Impulse Omnibus that's coming out at the end of the year?
I'm excited about that. So I'm definitely getting that. And I'm hoping the rumors that he's coming back and the real Impulse, not that horrible Bartor character they did in New 52. So yeah, I'm getting that on this. I got the Superboy one, the Carl Kessel, for Superboy, because I love the Superboy with the jacket and the crazy hair and
yeah, he's great.
The Metropolis Kid. I never liked it when he went to the black shirt and jeans. I remember when that happened. I was like, really?
I don't like it because he tucked in his shirt like a schmuck.
Yeah, I was like, this is not a superhero costume.
Yeah,
and I just love the whole punk rock look that he had when he first appeared. But yeah, I'm very excited for the Impulse Omnibus. That's going to be one of my favorite things.
Okay.
Jess, you want to go ahead and wrap this up? We're kind of closing in on 2 hours at this point.
Yeah, that sounds good. And who would like to tell the people? Luis, do you want to tell the people again where they can find their fabulous books that are so carefully packaged online?
I'll let Gabe do it this time.
Okay,
all right.
Gabe.
So if you guys are tired of paying full price for your trade paperbacks, hardcovers, omnibus, just to have them destroyed in the mail, then switch on over, check out our sponsor, InstockTrades.com, where you can find right now our guest's wonderful book, Puerto Rico Strong, for under $10, which is great if you need a couple extra bucks to reach that $50 threshold for the free shipping in the U.S. So check out instocktrades.com.
Very nice.
There you go.
Okay. Thank you very much for being on with us. And that wraps up tonight's show. You guys have been great. And the book is great. We certainly all learned a lot. And it's an important work of art, in my opinion, that really needs to be disseminated to the general public. I think that any little bit that we can do to help you with that is a job well done, because more and more people need to find out about this book.
And,
So,
I'm sorry. Marco,
no, go ahead.
Mark O'Neill, where can they find you guys if you want to pimp out your Twitter or anything like that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm on Facebook regular. I mean, just Marco Lopez on Facebook. I don't have a Facebook page. I don't have Instagram because with social media, being back and forth between Facebook and Twitter is enough for me. On Twitter, you can find me at Atomic, ATOMIC, Rex, REXENT. So that's you can find me on Twitter, like me, follow me, and hopefully I'll be interesting enough so that you'll actually want to follow me.
For me, it's just my name. So on Facebook, Neil M, as in Matthew Schwartz. That's also my Twitter handle. And then on Instagram, I am The Invisible Robot.
Nice. I like that name.
Thank you.
And again, Lion Forge Books is the publisher of your book. Is that correct?
Yep,
Yes.
that's correct.
And they're available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just type in Lion Forge, it'll immediately pop up. And besides Puerto Rico Strong, and making that, getting out there, they do a lot of great books. Their motto is comics for everyone. So they do a lot of books that, a lot of different genres. And they also have their own superhero line that, for us superhero fans out there, that you get the followers and you guys yourselves might find interesting.
Okay, nice. And Luis, where can they find you?
You guys can find me at Comics Guide 101 on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. Hit 10,000 subscribers on that.
Nice.
Thank you. I really should probably put out a video. It's been a while. So yeah, that's where you can find me. Gabe, what about you?
Everybody can find me here on YouTube as well as Gabe Infinity Watch. Instagram, I'm Gabe Infinity Watch. I'm on the Facebook group for the Omnibus Collectors group. And if you're ever in Las Vegas, swing on by to Torpedo Comics and say what up to me in person. I'll be there at the counter buying comics, CGCs, all that kind of great stuff. So check me out there too.
And you can find me, OmniDog, on YouTube on OmniDog's Vault, and on Instagram at OmniDogs_Vault. So that wraps up our OmniBros Live episode for tonight. And we had a great time. And our interview experience is just getting better and better. We're having a great time doing it. And we hope you enjoyed it. And we hope you guys can subscribe to our channel, smash the like button, and just please continue to support us. We love you guys out there. And that's it for tonight. Peace and love. Peace and love.